After I posted my last retro flight sim video, someone said to me, you haven't truly hit the bottom of the barrel until you've flown the Abacus A380. So here it is for Flight Simulator X and FS9. Let's jump inside and take a look. We're flying the Flight Sim X version of the plane today, but we'll take a look at the FS9 version for comparison at certain points in the video. So first up, even for the age, the interior modelling isn't great, and the instruments are ripped straight from the default Flight Sim X Airbus A320, as is the autopilot panel. So all the buttons on here, they are just default functionality of speed hold, heading hold, and altitude acquire / hold. There's no sort of manage mode here in this payware product. If we jump across to the FS9 version, the picture's even worse. I think this FS9 version of the Abacus A380 is where the plane got its bad reputation. So the instruments here on the MCP are all pretty much ripped straight out of default Boeing, and the PFD and MFD also appear to be ripped from a default 737. The one useful addition the FS9 version has is the nav button on the MCP. This is missing from the Airbus styled Flight Sim X version, and we'll see a little bit later on why that's nice to have. Taking a look at the rest of the virtual cockpit in Flight Sim X, we've got radio controls ripped from a Boeing, fairly average modelling of the seats and the pedestal, as well as some weird kind of half-done ECAM in the middle. There's a fully clickable overhead panel, but the buttons and flows are probably so different from the real thing that I'm not really going to bother with it. What is important is the FMC. When I saw the words custom FMC on the box, I figured we'd at least get a version of the backup FMC from the real-life A380, which is very similar to the FMC from the A320. And the Wilco A320 features an accurate version of that FMC, so it wasn't completely unheard of at the time. What we actually get is a visual model of what looks a bit like a Boeing FMC and functionality that's unlike either Boeing or Airbus. Most of the buttons don't work, but the ones that do essentially duplicate functionality that's already on the panel. Unrealistic as it is actually useful for planning a flight, so we're going to run through that very quickly. It's really simple. You just set your departure airport, arrival airport, and any waypoints along the way, as well as a cruising altitude. There's no performance planning or anything like that, and this really doesn't do anything different to the Garmin 430 that's already built into Microsoft Flight Sim. Remember, this is payware that was released in the same era as the PMDG 737, the PSS Concorde, and the Wilco A320, all of which are super accurate simulations. What we have here so far is a mix of default and freeware. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's a freeware A380 for Flight Sim X with roughly the same functionality. With the limited pre-flight stuff done, let's see how she flies. The first surprise for me flying this plane was that it has fly-by-wire in both Flight Sim X and FS9, so at least it doesn't fly like a Boeing. The exterior model is also decent with smooth, accurate animations. It must have been modelled by a different person to the virtual cockpit. I don't dislike flying this plane, I enjoy flying it as much as any other default aircraft in the basic sort of speed hold, heading hold and altitude hold modes. As we climb, let's take a look at that nav mode and see if we can actually get this to follow the route we put in our FMC. In Flight Sim X, activating LNAV or managed nav modes is about as weird as you can get. You have to go into the FMC and switch on the GPS mode in the autopilot menu. On the FS9 version, of course, you just press that nav button on the MCP, but neither version uses the correct Airbus buttons and methods for activating managed nav mode. Just for some context, when this was released on CD in the UK, it retailed for £20, which in 2006 was equivalent to $40. It's a shame that Flight Sim X never received a decent quality A380. I guess the same could be said for X-Plane, although at least the Hager A380 was decent back in the day, and to be honest, it's still flyable, and it's still the best Airbus A380 simulation out there, although that isn't saying much. We all have high expectations of the A380X by fly-by-wire for MSFS, but as long as it doesn't fly nose down at cruise like this one does, I'll be happy. Before we descend, I just want to show you the virtual 3D cabin that comes with this plane. I'm not sure if this was unfinished or the modeler looked at it and said, yeah, I've done a good job here. But either way, please let me know what you think of this cabin in the comments below. I won't cover the descent phase of this flight in too much detail, it's identical to any other default plane, so we'll skip straight ahead to approach. Before you know it, we're at bottom of descent. The plane is configured for landing at about 140 knots. We've hit the localizer and approach modes, and we're about to descend on the glide slope. As you'd expect, it isn't the smoothest ride down on the glide slope, as the plane moves up and down a lot as it corrects and overcorrects and tries to catch itself, but eventually we do end up in a stable approach. To be fair to Abacus, they did only charge $10 for this back in the day. It's not their fault that First Class Simulations decided to put it in a box, sell it for $40, and claim it was the most realistic simulation on the planet. So here we are, it's time for landing. There are no landing callouts, but you do have the reassuring sound of the GPWS telling you to pull up all the time. We're pretty heavily nose down on a 3-degree glide slope, and I'm guessing this plane doesn't have an auto land mode, so I'm going to fly the last bit manually. Considering the weather is set to fair weather, this is quite a lively experience. If you add to that the fact that I haven't manually landed an A380, or anything for that matter, for quite a while, it should make for quite an interesting ride. So sit back, brace, and enjoy the landing. I'm not quite sure why it tries to get so out of shape once it's on the ground, but we do manage to keep it on the tarmac and bring it to a stop before the threshold. We'll check out a replay and I'll offer some concluding thoughts on the Abacus A380. Most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the ride. If you did, please drop a like and feel free to subscribe, as I make this kind of content fairly regularly. I've quite enjoyed my time with the Abacus A380. Yes, it's a very basic, almost default aircraft, and I would have been upset had I spent $40 on it back in 2006. But for the cost of £6 in a second-hand store, for the opportunity to try the only payware A380 for Flight Sim X and FS9, as well as to be able to share it with you guys, I don't feel too ripped off. I'd love to hear what you thought of this plane in the comments below. Thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.